Let me call to order the Williamsport City Council meeting of April 11th. Please rise for an invocation by Councilman Slaughter, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Lord, we thank you for bringing us together again. We pray that you guide our thoughts and guide us as we make decisions here tonight on behalf of the city and the citizens and the taxpayers, Lord. We pray that you watch over those who are in harm's way, both here and abroad, and just be with us all, Lord. Guide us and keep us. We ask all these things. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let me move to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of City Council meeting minutes dated March 28th, 2019. Is there a motion and a second to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Hear a motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank?
Mr. Novello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and those minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is limited courtesy of the floor. We've had no requests for that this evening, so we'll move on to the next item, which is a presentation regarding the East 3rd Street Gateway project. Mr. Nichols.
Good evening, President Williamson, Vice President Allison, members of council. This presentation tonight is to outline the implementation of the previously adopted Old City East 3rd Street Gateway revitalization plan, which identified several strategic initiatives to continue the downtown revitalization efforts now being east of Market Street. These initiatives include the redevelopment of Basin Street and Franklin Street to create a very strong connection with Lycoming College's master plan, which is underway, and also to partner with PennDOT to initially reconstruct a portion of East 3rd Street, which will provide for the opportunity to rebalance the transportation network in that area, improve circulation and connectivity for all modes of transportation, and will promote economic development opportunities at specific locations between Market Street and Basin Street. It's been over 3 years now when a partnership was created between the City, County, and Lycoming College. This was through a DCD grant for planning activities, and then that was followed by a $1 million strategic development grant from the First Community Foundation Partnership of Pennsylvania at the beginning of 2017, and that served as the catalyst of what is going to be presented tonight. The slide up there right now shows the team that's in place, the partnership, which you can see are many players to make this a successful project. Here tonight, we have a few individuals that will help with this presentation. First, Dr. Entracti, President of Lycoming College, as well as Chris Kaiser, who is Project Manager from Larson Design Group, Leroy Klein, President of Delta Development Group, also Dave Whitmer from Reynolds Construction Management Services. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Chris Kaiser, who will take you through the next step of the presentation.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Kaiser.
Thanks, Bill. Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to walk you through a few pages. Obviously, I think everybody's, to some degree, has seen a few of these slides before when we get towards the end, but just it's all relevant, obviously. So the mission of the project, with the help of the strategic partners that Bill mentioned earlier, to identify, fund, and implement key projects vital to the economic enhancement and growth of the Old City, east of Market Street neighborhood. And we're going to do that with identifying some project needs. One is to revitalize efforts east of Market Street. Limited growth has occurred in that area for a number of years, and all the focus was west of Market Street, as we've seen over the years. The Lycoming College administration identified a need for campus expansion, so we wanted to obviously build on that. Some of the project goals: redevelop Basin Street to create a strong connection with Lycoming College. realign Franklin Street to improve connectivity with the East End neighborhood and the Central Business District. Then make some significant, which would ultimately be significant, adjustments to our transportation network to improve connectivity. And then encourage development opportunities per the Thomas Point Associates plan that was done in 2015-16. And also we want to review current zoning needs to encourage development. So the Connect Williamsport initiative was started a number of years ago, and it was identified with three strategic projects with Destination 2014, the Trade and Transit 2 project, the Old City Neighborhood Corridor project, which you can see 3. 1 is the Destination 2014, and then number 2 is the Trade and Transit 2 project. We added a fourth component to that, which would be the completion of the two-way traffic of 3rd Street connecting with Pine Street. So currently, we're focusing on the East Gateway, Old City neighborhood, but you can see there are a number of projects that are building upon that idea that's been under development for years now. And I'll just, if you can follow along, we've got the first is obviously the East 3rd Street, which we're calling the 84L, and the second, number 2, which would be the remainder of 3rd Street up to Campbell, which is the 84M project. And just so you know, that the L and the M stand for, that's PennDOT's delineation of those two projects. Since we moved the 3rd Street project, we expedited a portion, became L, and then their project is called M, so for future reference. Number 3, we have the Basin Franklin Street realignment, which will create that new gateway for the East End neighborhood. The Lycoming College Gateway Building, which is number 4. Not associated directly with this project, but Pathway to Health Phase 4 is soon going to be under construction. Then we have 4th and Basin Street, or 4th Street Basin to Penn Street on the east end. Then we have 2 signal projects that are going to be in conjunction with this at East 3rd and Basin and East 3rd and Mulberry. Also, we have a Riverwalk connection, Pine Street infrastructure improvements, the Willow Street pedestrian improvements, and finally the Russell Inn Heritage Park at the intersection of 3rd and Mulberry. So those are a lot of projects there to identify, and with that there's going to be about a 4-year window of construction time. So starting in 2019, we'll be under development with the 84L project, which will look to start in May of this year. The Basin Franklin Street realignment will also take place. We're looking for completion of that in the fall of 2019, along with the College Gateway Building, also completed in the fall of 2019. Pathway to Health, as I mentioned earlier, Phase 4 is going to start here soon and will be completed by December of this year. The 4th Street Basin to Penn Street project will go out to bid in December 2019. Then in 2020, we have continuation of the East 3rd Street project with the signals being installed and construction ending up in December 2020. 3rd Street 84M will be let in December of 2020 or will be advertised, or the bids will be open in December of 2020. The Riverwalk connection will be let in January 2020 with a completion in December. Then again, as I mentioned earlier, 4th Street Basin to Penn will be complete in December 2020. And Pine Street improvements will be let in the spring of 2020 and will be, you'll see, completed in 2021. Again, the 3rd Street, the 84M project, which is PennDOT's larger 3rd Street reconstruction, that will start at State Street and work up to Campbell and then the intersection of Campbell and 4th. As I mentioned, the Pine Street improvements will be finished in April 21, and then the Russell Inn Heritage Park will start in January 21, with construction complete the following December. Willow Street pedestrian and green improvements will let in July of 2020, and construction complete in 2021. And continuing is the 84M in 2022, and then possibly Pathway to Health Phase 5 in 2022. So you can see there are a number of projects. It's going to be take at least a 4-year window of time to design and construct and close out. So the area that we're really focusing on tonight is, again, the Lycoming College Gateway and the East 3rd Street improvements. There are essentially 5 components to the project. One is the 2 signals, the 3rd in Basin Street and 3rd in Mulberry. There will be new signals there at those intersections, new pedestrian improvements there as well. Then number 2, we have the reconstruction work that's going to be occurring, and the streetscape improvements that are going to occur from Basin to State Street. That'll be new curb, new sidewalk, streetscape enhancements, street lights, street trees, and then a full depth reconstruction of 3rd Street. Number 4, just to the north, we have the Franklin Street realignment, and then the Basin Street widening and Basin Street improvements. And then finally 5, there will be a number of infrastructure improvements with the Williamsport Municipal Water Authority and Sanitary Authority occurring throughout that zone. So we received bids back in January. The low bid was by Hall Baker, and I know we're asking for a review over the next till the next council meeting to award that contract to them as the low bidder. But again, the bids were received in 2022 or in January 22 of this year, and Hall Baker was the low bid. And then we have just a quick image of what Basin Street improvements are going to look like with the cross-section, the widening of Basin Street. There'll be a new lane added on the west side to allow for that southbound traffic, and you can see a new realigned Franklin Street opening up that corridor to reconnect with the East End neighborhood. The cross-section gives you a little bit more perspective of how that Basin Street's going to work now. Obviously, it's much wider than it would be today if we went out there. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ken Trachty, President of Lycoming College, to provide a brief update on where the college stands with their project.
Good evening, members of council. It's nice to be back with you again. I believe the last time that I was here, we were about to break ground on what we are now calling the Craft Gateway Center. And as you can see from the picture in front of you, and I'm sure some of you have driven through the area as well, considerable progress has been made over the intervening months. I think I would like to, first of all, just remind the members of council of some of the functions that will be in the building and the way in which they connect, not only to programs on the college, but will be part of how the college becomes even more deeply connected to the city and the community. On the first floor of the building is what we call our Center for Outdoor Leadership and Education. And that programmatic element is very excited about the connection to the Riverwalk that will be a part of what I understand to be the second phase of this project. This is a student life program. We have been building very strong student interest in a variety of outdoor recreation sports, including we are going to have a bike shop on the first floor of the building where our students will be able to check out bikes and, you know, once the Riverwalk connection is made, proceed down Basin Street out onto the Riverwalk and really enjoy some of the Pennsylvania wilds in a way in which some of them have not been able to do so. The second floor of the building will, as you might remember, include our admissions office. And I think this is very important because it means that there will be a lot of traffic, not a ton of traffic, but a lot of business coming into that area because families will approach Lycoming College off of the Basin Street entrance And as our revitalization of that part of the city progresses, we think it'll excite them about Lycoming College, but it'll also, I think, bring business to what we hope will be the private investment that will follow as we work with our partners to do the infrastructure improvements in the area. Similarly, there will be an opportunity for our alumni. There will be an alumni advancement center in the building, and so this will become an arrival point for those many generations that studied at Lycoming College and will be able to come back to the college. There is also a new 202-seat presentation space in the building, and I know many individuals in Williamsport already take advantage of the lectures that we offer. It'll be much easier to access those lectures, and this will be designed for presentations and lectures as opposed to our honors hall, which is really a music facility. The building is on schedule to open for the fall of 2019. The masons have already started work on the stone on the corner. I've been through the building twice in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Most all of the rooms are framed out, and they're very close to beginning the drywall process, and soon you'll start to see brick on the front facade rather than that green, which is, not quite as attractive as the brick will be. So we anticipate being ready to go in the fall, and we're very excited about that. I think the other thing I would want to share with council is I think it was about 2 weeks ago, the president of ACUP, which is the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities of Pennsylvania, paid me a visit. His name is Tom Foley. He was a former secretary at the state level under the Rendell administration. And Tom had heard about the project that we are doing here in Williamsport, but didn't really have a strong sense of exactly how many partners had come together or what the ambition and scope of the project would be. And so, we spent some time, and I described to him not only our building, but the other component elements. And then I also talked to him about how we've come together with city council and private developers and the county and the water and sanitary authorities and PennDOT. Since that time, I was at a meeting in Harrisburg, and Tom took the opportunity to brag about what we're doing here in Williamsport with probably 40 or 50 other presidents in the room from around the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so we're really becoming an exemplar or a model for how you can form a partnership between a college, the government authorities, private developers, and other levels of government to be able to revitalize a long neglected part of the city. So again, I thank council for all the support that you have provided during this project. The college remains committed. We've actually begun thinking about, we know that hopefully you will approve streetscape improvements between Basin and Penn, and we started thinking about whether there might be some additional investments that we might want to make to yet further develop that area. So I'm glad to be here and appreciate your ongoing support.
Good evening. It's nice to see all of you again. I'd like to start tonight with the page that was distributed prior to the meeting. This page is designed to give you an understanding of every dollar for every project and the match that is associated with those projects. So on the far left side, you will see that the total expenditure for all the projects that we talked about earlier is $22.8 million. And then you will see across the bottom where that $22.8 million comes from. One of the things that was asked during our last presentation, I think it was with the Finance Committee, was an illustration of not only the state grant, but how the match is being met for that grant, so that you had an awareness of what a city obligation could be in the event that something didn't come together. Well, I'm pleased to report that everything that we talked about has come together. If you look at the first box, starting with 2016 CFA MTF, going to CFA GTRP, what you will see is that you had 10 state applications for grant requests for various projects. All 10 have been funded. The City of Williamsport is 10 for 10 with their grant requests for this project. But what is also very exciting is everything to the right of that grant, and that is all of the money that's being provided by the foundations, by Lycoming County, by Lycoming College, Bill's work with RVT. All of those show you how the match is being met for each of those individual projects, so that if you had a question about what the budget was, it's there. If you wanted to know what the state grant amount was, it's there. And then if you had a question about where the money would come from to match the state grant, it's illustrated on the right. Now, what I'd like you to do is go then to the single individual sheet, where we tried to show you how those numbers translate into the bid that we were talking about earlier. And so you will see on this sheet an itemization of the costs that come from each individual project. The $1.5 million for East 3rd Street, the signals $796,000, the streetscape $867,000, Franklin and Basin Street basically $1.2 million, and the water sewer. And then what you will see is the reference back to the large chart where you can see the PennDOT funds, you can see the Green Light Go funds, you can see the foundation funds, you can see the CFA grant, and you can see the PennDOT grant. So this first project and the bid that's associated with it, $5.284 million, is just one piece of that larger chart that we showed you. But on this sheet, we show you the source of the funding and the source of the match. One of the other things that I wanted to share with you is one of the questions we had in that last Finance Committee meeting was how it breaks down in terms of individual bid items. And so it's not in your packet, but in the event that you wanted more detail than the detail of these two charts, we have by individual line item from the bid the eligible fund that provides that individual line item and the match for that, so that any item in that bid, whether you're talking about the excavation, whether you're talking about mobilization, whether you're talking about the materials, every line item from that bid is broken down into an individual cost consideration that we have confirmed eligibility with the state and confirmed the match for the source of funding for the state release. So in terms of exposure on an unpredicted item, what I can say to you tonight is that every individual item in the bid has been identified, has been approved as eligible, and the match is in place to meet that obligation. So in terms of that $5.2 million, there isn't a single individual line item in that bid that's not identified, approved, and matched to start the project. That's the way we've approached each of these individual projects. I think it's important to recognize the leadership of council, the leadership of the county commissioners, but candidly, Senator Yaw, your representatives did an unbelievable job in advancing these individual applications. I've been doing this for 31 years, and I have never been in a situation where it was 10 for 10 in terms of individual requests and individual approvals. At the end of the day, the state funding commitment on that $22 million is $7.4 million. It's because of the collaborative nature of your partnerships, the college, the county, the local foundations, obviously city council, but all of those entities working together, the state was very supportive of each of those individual projects. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about the specific numbers or the items that are illustrated on the source and use chart.
Thank you very much. Is that the end of the presentation? Okay, let's do questions once we have the full presentation in front of us. Thank you.
So we have one final slide. I know many of you on council have seen this. There's probably some others though in the audience that would be interested to see this. It's a visualization or rendering that was done. It was utilized for a number of the grant applications that Leroy mentioned to help illustrate what the project was going to be, or the project vision or concept. So this would be entering Market Street going east. We'd have two-way traffic heading in both directions. You can see Jersey Shore State Bank would be on your left. All the buildings that you see that are white are existing. We would now be entering, there'd be a portal or an entrance near Mulberry Street for some kind of visualization of you're now entering the Old City neighborhood. We have two current vacant lots on those parcels, so there's an opportunity for some type of development there. At the corner of Mulberry and 3rd Street, we have what would be the Russell Inn Heritage Park. Not many people know that was one of the first, if not the first settlement or building in the city of Williamsport, and played a pretty vital role in the city becoming the city. So we look for a structure there to honor that. Traveling further east, you can see new street trees, new improvements to the streetscape itself. Now entering Basin, we have vehicles traveling both north and southbound. A potential private development would happen on the west side, maybe some mixed use with retail on the first floor, second, third floor living. There you can see that traffic moving in both directions with a center median or planted barrier to add to the streetscape value and approach the college's gateway building, which you were able to see kind of where it was in construction as of Wednesday. And now you can see what that visualization was a few years ago for that building. A realigned Franklin Street, traveling up to where we would connect Franklin Street in with the existing portion of Franklin, opening up some green space opposite of the Gateway building, new entrance into the Gateway. The college would still be maintaining many of their architectural elements. Here's a little closer look at the Russell Inn Heritage Park. Again, as I mentioned, it would be similar to those of you who might have traveled to Philadelphia to see the Ben Franklin house. It's just really a skeleton structure to let everyone know of what was here at one point, and then some historical reference within. Just a green space and plaza that would be look to be utilized by those living new residents living downtown. With the Russell Inn, with that being the historic building, maybe a play on some historical architecture for future residents, apartments, single family, and then kind of a little bit more of a historical approach to some outdoor space, maybe similar to Society Hill in Philadelphia, really trying to create maybe some pockets of gathering spaces. Again, there's another look at the two vacant lots you see on a daily basis on the west side of Mulberry. Great opportunities for development. And another look at what could be on the west side of Basin. There's Willow Street soon. That would be you can see kind of the long connection east and west there. That would provide for a great pedestrian access connecting the east and the west with limited vehicular use on that street. Another closer look. And this was provided by Gannett Fleming for use in those grant applications. Finally, I'll turn it over to Bill for some final comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, that said, there's, as with other major projects that we've completed, the Coles project, Williamsport redevelopment project, Trade and Transit 2, there's a number of actions the council has taken. I think with Williamsport redevelopment, there's 51 different resolutions, Trade and Transit, a number of contracts, obviously with 10 different grants that are supporting this project. There's a lot of information. So as we've done with other major projects, we're putting together a binder that we're going to pass out early next week with all the actions the council's taken to date, with outlines of what is proposed to happen. Also, we'll include the proposed resolution to award the contract for next week. It'll have that information that Leroy referred to in terms of the line item costs for the 3rd Street project. And so we want to give council plenty of time to reference what's already been done, as well as what action we are asking council to consider at the next meeting. So these will be probably completed tomorrow and distributed early next week. So you have plenty of time to look, through and review the information. So, hopefully that'll provide everything council needs to make the first major approval that we need to get the project started. With that said, just want to thank everybody that was part of this presentation. I look forward to working with council and looking forward to getting this project underway. And we're glad, I'm sure, to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for all the presentations. I'll open it up for questions from members of council or comments. Obviously, we've been kept apprised of this project and been a major part of this project from the very beginning. And I think the gentlemen who spoke tonight are a big reason why it's been able to make as much progress as quickly as it has, to be able to see groundbreakings both on the public sector and private sector, in the recent past and in the near future. And I think what was said about being 10 for 10 on grants is on the back of not only the partnerships that you all addressed and the collaborative work that was done, but in particular on the quality planning that everyone contributed to over the last 5 or 6 years. Putting together a good plan is a strong foundation for then being successful in lots of different aspects of this kind of project and many other kinds of projects. And I think we should all feel good that the state is recognizing that strong planning process that was founded in a collaborative spirit and has remained very much a collaborative partnership between all the entities involved. So thank you for the update tonight, and thank you for each of your hard work in bringing us to this point and taking us along the next steps. I think I speak for council when I say that we're proud to be part of this and look forward to the opportunity to play our next step, our role in the next steps of approving the various resolutions and awarding the various contracts that we need to participate in to make sure that this project remains as successful as it already is. So thank you again. Mr. Allison.
To follow those comments up, it was, my memory serves me correctly, and I'm pretty sure it does, it was roughly about 6 years ago that the whole the genesis, the idea for having a collaboration started. So we're 6 years into it, and it's going to go to 2022, just this part of it. We're not really addressing the private development that we hope to see and encourage in that area. So it's going to stretch out a lot longer than that, but that's another 3 years, so roughly a 9-year process. It sounds like it takes a long time, but it does when you do things correctly. The partnerships, the planning, and to know that there's a kind of detail now in the project where we can ask to see line items in the bids, and that it can be matched up to the funding. That's incredible. But it's the kind of knowledge and transparency and accountability that we like to see and like to participate in. And we thank you that there is that that kind of detail that's available, and the collaboration that has allowed Senator Yaw on our behalf. He can lobby, but he needs to have something in his hand, tangible, to be able to make a case. And clearly, the institutions and other arms of government and our own city planning and Mr. Nichols being involved in this and getting a lot of those things done, and our consultants have done a great job. And this is the fruit of that labor. It's not done easily, it's not done quickly, but it is a model that is successful.
Very good. Any additional comments or questions? Ms. Mealy?
Just how excited I think I am, and all of us are, to see this project beginning to come to fruition, to see improvements, the infrastructure improvements the city can do in the neighborhood, and that the college can partner within the neighborhood, and then to hope, of course, that expands out to private investment in terms of both aesthetic improvements and, of course, business improvements in the neighborhood. I look forward to seeing exciting new developments over the next few years, both perhaps city-inspired and city-helped, and then also private development.
And I think both of you make a good point. One of the discussions that we had at the time on council was to think about how could we spark economic development in a new way, because the models that we had been following, that had been developed in many other places and had limited success elsewhere, and were having limited success here in terms of funneling public dollars to enhance private projects with the hope that they would have a positive domino effect, wasn't really having the intended effect in the areas surrounding the kind of projects that we had completed in the prior decade or two. And so this new model was one in which we hope to be a catalyst for a collaboration, and then limit the city's investment and the investment of public dollars overall into the infrastructure to enable private entities to then be able to be successful in their own investment. And so the leveraging of pretty limited, definitely limited city dollars, pretty limited county dollars, and in the grander scheme of things, even fairly limited state dollars is already leveraging quite a bit of private investment. And then all of that together, I think, will spark, we hope, if the plan is fully successful, will spark additional private business investment that will create jobs and economic opportunities, and of course also enhance the quality of life in the area. So it's a new model that is proving so far to be fairly successful as we enter that sixth year of what is at least a 9, and who knows what other economic activity in year 10 or 12 or 15 this will all generate. So thank you again, everyone involved, including my colleagues on council. If there are no other additional comments, thank you again for coming and making the presentation tonight. Next item on the agenda, might as well go ahead and take care of the ordinance. Ordinance designating St. James Place in final reading. Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance designated St. James Place.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this ordinance in final reading?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Benner, anything additional to add?
Doctor, no, there is not. I have nothing additional to add to this.
Okay. Any comments or questions then from members of council? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank, on the ordinance in final reading.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes, and the ordinance is approved in final reading. Next item on the agenda then is a resolution honoring Williamsport's heart and soul. Mrs. Frank, please.
Resolution honoring Williamsport's heart and soul.
Could you go ahead and read this one
Sure.
through?
Whereas Williamsport Heart and Soul volunteers have been working on an ongoing collaborative partnership between the Susquehanna Greenway Partnership, the Pennsylvania Humanities Council, a partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Orton Family Foundation, the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, the Bureau of Recreation and Conservation, and the City of Williamsport since January 2016. And whereas Williamsport's Heart and Soul community engagement efforts included, but not limited to, the following activities and objectives: a public outreach surveys to collect data about what people want to see, change, and what people value most about living in Williamsport; an in-depth story gathering and story sharing that brought residents together to discover what really matters most when choosing to call Williamsport home; a summit up event for citizen volunteers to sort through data and draft heart and soul statements honoring what citizens value most; a roundtable discussion to discuss how our values have changed over time and explore what we need to do to strengthen and uphold them for future generations; deeper discussions on key issues affecting Williamsport's future at a series of focus group discussions hosted around the city; community celebration from the Heart of Williamsport movie events; Williamsport Wednesday community conservations to identify ideas for actions that bring citizens together on improving our city; Sunday Fun Day ideas to Action Summit, where residents help to decide which project ideas should be initiated in 2019; a public process of identifying and prioritizing governing actions that represent the core community values. Whereas Williamsport residents' output helped in the creation of the Heart of Williamsport Action Plan document, which reflects the values and ideals gathered through this process. Whereas Williamsport City Council adopted Williamsport resident values being arts, culture, and heritage, beautiful natural environment, diverse community, educational assets, health, safety, and welfare, opportunities and economic growth, small town feel, and our urban amenities. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Williamsport plans to base their decisions in part on these values, which represent the most common core ideals from a broad segment of the community. We recognize this effort to collect voices and visions of our citizens upon which to base our future and the daily discussions we make in order to embody this will of the community.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure then to, let's see, we did the motion in a second. Have we? I don't think we did, now that I mention it. So is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. And as I was saying, it is my pleasure to present this resolution honoring the volunteers and the organization that are all connected with Heart and Soul. It's been a pleasure to watch them work over the last 2 years, 3 years, and in particular, I think it's a great opportunity for members of our community in a grassroots kind of way to, through their initiative and bringing people together outside the political realm, to bring them together to generate ideas on what they want their community to be that are unencumbered with the processes that going through the government process sometimes brings, and then finding ways to either execute those ideas, again, outside the constraints that the government process sometimes brings, or to become advocates for the things that really need to happen for projects that must have government involvement. Grassroots community building, developing what I would call social capital in the process, thinking about the quality of life of every citizen in this community and giving each and every one of them a voice in shaping the present and the future of this community is my interpretation of what they've achieved through a variety of strategic initiatives and a whole lot of tactical work to bring it all together. And so when this idea came before us on council, I thought it was absolutely appropriate to recognize and honor all of the work that they've done over the last 3 years, and as a means to encourage others to be involved, whether they're involved in the Heart and Soul organization or their own grassroots initiatives to aim at improving the quality of life and opportunities for every one of our citizens. I think it's an appropriate recognition for everything you guys are doing. So I applaud your work on behalf of myself and my colleagues. I will yield my time to you if you guys would like to add anything.
I just wanted to say on behalf of the Susquehanna Greenway Partnership and the Heart of Williamsport leadership team, and the many volunteers that have been part of this effort, we want to thank you for your support and for passing this resolution acknowledging what citizens told us they value most about Williamsport. In appreciation, we're going to gift you a graphic presentation you can choose to display somewhere. And with that, there's also laminated copies for each council member, just so you have them to read and you have them in front of you. And previously, we shared a draft of the action plan with you, and we just want to welcome your continued input as we move forward with these action ideas into implementation. We currently have, as an update, almost 400 volunteers for the citywide cleanup, and that does not include the Newberry effort, which is probably at least another 50. So that's happening over these next 2 weeks, and that's just a very exciting thing, and we're starting to see that the city, there's not as much litter around as there used to be, so hopefully we're initiating more of that. We want to invite anyone interested in helping to advance the additional project ideas in our action plan for 2019 to be part of our stewardship team. And the idea is that we're going to shepherd these ideas into the future. We're not going to implement them all. And a great example, something we heard time and time again, was people wanted a connection at Basin Street to the Riverwalk. We just heard a wonderful presentation about partners that are making that happen. So we're just the holders of the ideas, and we're going to try to connect these with the people that can make them happen. We will also be formalizing a Susquehanna Greenway Rivertown team, which will focus on the project ideas associated with the values, beautiful natural environment, and urban amenities. And so we would appreciate any representation from City Council if somebody would want to be involved in that team. And again, just to thank you for honoring the heart and soul process and the citizen input that it represents.
Thank you very much. Are there comments and questions from my colleagues?
Members of council,
Oh,
may
sorry, Mr.
I
Watson.
also have you meet Corey Ellison, who is our Susquehanna Greenway Partnership Executive Director.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Comments or questions from members of council on the resolution?
I think you said it all, Jonathan.
Thank you.
I'm not sure how I should take that.
Well said.
Thank you again. And on the resolution, Mrs. Frey.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, the resolution carries. I'm going to move a little bit around on the agenda since we have other guests in the room. Mr. Nahr, I think, if you're ready to go, we will take your agenda item number 18 next. A subdivision related to lots at Railway and East 3rd Street.
Good evening, Dr. Williamson and members of council. What we present to you tonight is Barry Eck and Suscom Incorporated has requested a subdivision lot add-on be approved for the properties at the corner of Railway and East 3rd Street. It is located within the CS zoning district. Mr. Eck went through a conditional use and a lot consolidation back in October 2017 through council to establish multifamily dwelling units in that area. So a combination of parcels 69007, 110, 111, and 112 were consolidated as one parcel back as part of the conditional use. Today's proposed subdivision lot addition of parcel 69007, 105 would be to add Lot 1 containing 7,663 square feet to the consolidated parcel back in October 2017. Lot 2 containing 9,318 square feet would be to add on to the Suscon property to the north. The Lycoming County Planning Commission did review the plans on February 22nd, 2019, and I have attached the comments. And City Planning Commission did review the proposal on March 18th and gave positive recommendation.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion and a second to approve this lot subdivision plan?
So move.
Second.
Here, a motion and a second. Comments or questions from members of council? Mr. Noviello?
Barry, just for my curiosity, it looks like there's going to be a fair amount of paving being done here. Is that correct?
There will be no additional paving done. There was a parking lot that previously was there.
Okay,
To the left of the multifamily dwelling, that will just be a grassed area.
okay. The only reason I'm asking is because I'm wondering if we're getting concerns, noted with regard to MS4 and things that are going to be coming in that direction.
And that was in a consideration. Originally, he was going to do the parking lot, but he elected basically to leave that as green space, so he purchased the property to the right, which that's actually why it's being subdivided and added to his.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Mrs. Katz?
So you're dividing this with Barry Eck and Suscon. This is two different entities, right?
It's actually, the parcel is 69007, 105.
Okay.
And at that point, that lot is going to be subdivided. Lot 1 will go to Mr. X parcel, which has the multifamily housing. The other lot, which is a parking lot, will go to Suscon, which is part of their facility as well.
Okay, so then the taxes will go,
Correct, in both
okay,
directions.
okay, just want to clarify.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Have either entities yet shared what their intentions are to this in terms of the new additions to their lots?
They're just, again, it's an existing parking lot.
Yep.
So one of them is going to take parking spaces for their purpose at the multifamily dwellings, and Susquehanna is going to continue to use that parcel as part of their parking. So
no
it's
changes
an
then.
existing parcel is what it is, of parking.
Thank you. Mrs. Katz?
Suscon is still doing plastic, right?
Correct,
Okay, and it's still owned by the same owner,
correct.
Pierce? Is it Pierce?
No, it is not owned by Mr. Pierce any longer. There's another entity that does own that.
Okay, thank you. But it's still doing plastic?
Correct.
Okay.
If there are no further comments, Mrs. Katz on the subdivision plan, please.
Ms.
I'm
Mealy.
sorry, Mrs. Fricker.
It's okay. Ms.
Just
Mealy.
thinking about what she just asked about.
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Dr. Williamson.
Yeah. Yes, and the subdivision plan is approved. Next item on the agenda, we'll move to Mr. Girardi's items, since he also has people in the room, I believe, starting with the request for demolition for 217 Brandon Avenue. Mr. Girardi.
Yes, good evening, President Williams, members of council. What you have before you is a request for a demolition for 217 Brandon Place. It's not Brandon Avenue. I apologize for that. What this request to do is demolish the structure located at that address, which is an R2 residential zoning district. The structure was used as a single-family dwelling and has been vacant for several years. Grass will be planted after the demolition. The owner then will consolidate the lots into one lot with lot 215 Brandon Place, and his intent is to place a garage down the road on that particular parcel of ground, attached to his house or detached from his house. And we do have a representative here if you have any questions of him or myself.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion and a second to approve this request for demolition?
So moved.
Here, a motion and a second. Comments or questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Frank?
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Dr. Williamson.
Yes, and that request is approved. Next item on the agenda is certificates of appropriateness for 333 West 4th Street. Mr. Girardi?
Yes, this request is from Mr. Edwin Condon. He is requesting to erect approximately 117 feet of 6-foot-high black-coated chain link fence with 2 gates and 77 feet high of 77 feet long of 4-foot-high black-coated fence. The gates will also be painted black. This is to incorporate or enclose his parking lot area that he has. And we do have a representative here if he has any questions of myself or him.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion and a second to approve this certificate?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. Comments or questions from members of council? Ms. Mealy?
Mr. Girardi, does this meet our design ordinances? I can't actually recollect if they address fencing at all.
No. Does not.
It doesn't meet them, or they don't address it? I'm sorry. To address
Right.
fencing. Okay. And to my recollection, there is currently some sort of barrier between Mr. Congdon's parking lot and the rest of that area, correct?
Yes, there is on the one side, he does have a rail with a wire fence, with a wire rope that goes through, and then you have Mr. Klingerman next to that who has a 6-foot-high white fence.
Okay, so I'm assuming that, sorry, I'm just trying to get a mental image here. I'm assuming that he'll be removing any other materials,
I would assume that. You can ask.
put the fence in?
The rails that are there are to protect from vehicles going through and hitting Mr. Klingerman's property. So the fence will be posted so that the coated fence is against those rails.
So it's, I'm trying to remember, kind of a metal rail with wood posts there?
No, there's just,
Oh, like
when the parking
wire or
authority
something?
years ago did the consolidation,
Mm-hmm.
put the parking lot in, they took railroad spears and put them into the ground.
Okay,
Mr. Klingerman, you know, the way the property line runs, he had to put a lift with a small wall, and then he put vinyl fencing. He didn't come all the way down.
got it.
So what I'm doing is, I'm using black coated fencing similar to what was encapsulated, the YWCA. The entire back of their property was done in the fencing. So on the Claremont side, the fence will be 77 foot long, okay, 6 foot high with a gate, so that the
It might be wise, only because
Yeah.
we're not going to catch any of this for the record, if you actually go up to the microphone, sorry. I should have occurred to me a minute ago.
And I also have attached pictures of what that fence is going to look like.
Yeah,
On the east line, which is between the rear of Katie's back to Mr. Klingerman's outside bar area for the scores,
yeah,
the fence will be 6 foot high, black coated so as not to rust or do whatever, with a gate that's at the end of the building for Katie's. On the west side will be a 4-foot fence that's 117 foot long with gates to protect my property because I've had issues with parking and pedestrians going behind my facility to use it as a facility,
to cut across.
okay?
So
So
I'm
I need to
looking at
encapsulate
I'm looking at the aerial view here, just so I understand a little better.
Right.
But, yeah,
But the 4-foot fence will give visibility from the west to the rear of the property. It won't close off the property so you can't see it.
got it. Okay,
And the gates are there because I have people, because of the elimination and going to the central business district and the overabundance of parking in the lot because of what's there between the movie theater, the community arts center, and Liberty Arena. Everybody wants to utilize my property.
and you haven't found like a tow-away thing to be effective? I said you haven't found just having people towed to be an effective strategy? Got it. I think I've wrapped my head around. Does anyone else have any questions? Sorry.
Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none. Mrs. Fry?
Ms. Mealy?
No.
Mr. Novello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes. and the certificate is approved. Next item on the agenda then is certificate for 245 West 4th Street. Mr. Girardi?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, though, before we go any further, since Stu is here and the Discovery Workshop does abut his building, I was wondering if Ms. Mealy might want to give an update on what's going on with that facility?
Ms. Mealy?
Sure. Actually, I was exceptionally fortunate to talk to the new developer of the parcel this morning about an unrelated matter, and he gave me an update. And Mr. Congdon, I hope you'll be pleased. The building, they have closed on the structure. Apparently, there were about $30,000 in back taxes owing on the structure, and the new developer has paid the back tax bill. The proposal is market rate apartments throughout the entire structure. The parking lot what probably will be a parking lot that sits directly next to your building is not owned by the new developer, and I can't speak to what will happen with that. But the building itself, I believe he said he was going to have somebody down here later on this week to pick up around the structure, and that they have all the financing in place for the build out, so that it should be moving fairly quickly here. Should add a little bit of interest to the neighborhood, and a little bit more, I guess, foot traffic and excitement down there.
And once the new developer decides or fixes that wall, then we can have Mr. Klingerman go in and seed it, which he intends to do prior to putting his parking lot in.
Exactly.
But that was the reason why we held off, because they're going to have to get on that property to fix that particular wall.
I am not privy to the final agreement with Mr.
Right.
Klingerman, but I know that one of the concepts that was being considered was an easement to allow for lay down there during construction. So it might be a while before that's turned in officially into whatever the final product is. But it looks as though currently we're moving forward. And I think that the developer is hoping to make an official announcement here at some point in the near future. So we should be hearing something.
Exciting development to see something move forward on that property. Mrs. Katz?
Should Stu wait for his fencing then?
I don't think it's going to affect his property at all, unless.
It won't
But
affect him?
at the very minimum, it might make sense before he has that, Mr. Congdon, before you have that expense to your business, maybe to at least have an opportunity to meet the new developer and see if there's any particular reason why changes there might affect how you look at your needs.
That is true. It's expensive to fence something in. I've been looking at it for my house, and it ain't cheap. If it would be any help, Mr. Congdon, I could certainly try to put you in touch with him. I don't know.
I've waited since 2014, and I'm just going to concern myself with my...
That's totally fine. But if if you change your mind, you know where to find me.
Yeah, thank you. So now we'll move on to the next item, which is a certificate of appropriateness for 245 West 4th Street.
Yes, this certificate of appropriate request is from the city of Williamsport. This is for the construction of a handicap ADA ramp, railing, and lighting. The ramp is to be approximately 70 feet in length with an intermediate landing. I have attached drawings, pictures showing you what it's going to look like at this point. It does not affect the removal of the tree outside, the oak tree that's out there in the corner. It'll come down to a landing in front of it and then come out to the sidewalk.
Thank you. And this is the certificate of appropriateness. Obviously, the city is the owner of the building and therefore the one that would be constructing the ramp, and we are not reviewing that internally from a letting a bid and constructing the project tonight, but the discussion, I'm guessing, might go in that direction a little bit as well.
This is just the concern of the look of the actual ramp and does it fit, and that's why we're here in front of it. So hopefully, if you do go through and do approve this, then that's one less thing we have to wait to be done when they go for the bidding.
Okay, and so with that, let me ask for a motion and a second to approve the certificate.
I'll move.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. Comments or questions? Ms. Mealy?
I guess it might be an apt time, and maybe I'll let Mr. Henderson address this a little further. We did discuss this item a bit at the Finance Committee meeting because it was the Public Works meeting was canceled, we sort of adopted the Public Works agenda into the Finance Committee, and Mr. Henderson sat in with us since he was in the building. And one of the items was a discussion on the ramp on the Public Works agenda, so we sort of looked at the certificate of appropriateness as part of the larger discussion on the construction of the ramp. And then, actually, even more unusually, had a constituent who came in to talk to us about it in a strange moment of serendipitous timing, immediately following our discussion. It seems to me it was the general opinion of the 2 members of the Finance Committee and 1 member of the Public Works Committee, you're on Public Works, aren't you? Okay, who were in attendance, that this is obviously a positive development, but that it might be wise for us to move a little further with things like the bidding and the funding of the whole project before we move forward with the specific certificate of appropriateness. Just out of fear, of course, that maybe the look of the work will have to change if the bids come in significantly higher than we were expecting or something like that. So we might be putting the cart a bit before the horse. But as I said, it wasn't officially on our agenda. We did not, of course, really review it. We just discussed it. So I'm introducing that as a point of discussion for the remaining members of council.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson?
I was there for that discussion, and the pictures look great. I mean, this is going to look wonderful, provided we can pay for it. And since we're the ones that have to make the decision what we can pay for, I only think it's appropriate that we figure out the funding in entirety before we move ahead with what it's going to look like. I would make a motion that we table this for now, so that we can make sure everything else is in place and just go through the normal order. So that would be my motion.
There's a motion to table. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the motion to table? Hearing none.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Noviello.
Do you have any kind of timeline in mind? I mean, if we let this open up, we're all going to spread this out for who knows how long. We've been on, you and I and the Public Works Committee have been on this since the outset, and we'd like to bring this to fruition as soon as possible, I'm sure. Yeah. So do you have any indication of what you mean by a timeline regarding getting our financials?
Well,
Can we set a limit on that, I guess is what I'm asking.
I think the process was moving forward, was my impression. It's only a matter of a month or 2 before we have numbers and we put it out for bid. And we're getting a construction estimate, was my is Mr. Winder down there somewhere? Okay. We're getting a construction estimate right now, then we'll put it out for bid. So it shouldn't take long to resolve all of that.
I'm happy to hear
But the budget, I think the total budget is estimated at something around $560,000. We have all the sources for that money, but should the project come in dramatically over budget, then we may have to, of course, curtail some of our beautiful work here. But I'm not sure.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, just to tag on, I don't think this will be dragged out. And in fact, this kind of action, a certificate of appropriateness, can be approved in any meeting very easily, very quickly. And so I don't anticipate any problems with it before, but just out of prudence, I think it's important for us to make sure we can pay for it before we approve what it looks like. So that's my thought on that. So really, the timing comes down to when the administration is able to get together the bids and all of that, make sure we have all that, then we can roll with it right away. Thank you.
And they can happen simultaneously.
Absolutely.
Yes. Are there any comments on the motion to table? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank, on the motion to table.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Nubiallo?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Weems?
Yes, and the certificate of appropriateness is tabled. I just thought of something for the solicitor. Is there a presumption of approval if we don't act on the application
I don't think so.
during a particular time period?
Considering it's the city's,
Well, sure, but if just thinking about this in other contexts, is this one of those where it's presumed approved unless we reject, or the reverse? I'll ask that for you to get back to me on that later on.
I will get back to you on that momentarily.
Thank you very much. In this case, I don't think it really matters because
We presumably approve.
Yeah, we would approve our own plan theoretically, once we have a plan that we've approved. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jardy. Next item on the agenda then is certificate of appropriateness for 214 Basin Street.
Yes, the last one I have is for 211 Basin Street. Attached for your approval would be resurfacing the exterior and roof of this structure. The material to be used will be metal siding and roofing. The colors would be as follows. The walls will be two colors. Approximately the first 4 feet of it will be a charcoal, and the remaining will be an ash gray. And then the roof would be a charcoal color also. All the trim around the windows and doors and so forth would be a white. And we do have a representative here if you have any questions of him or myself.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this certificate? Here, a motion and a second. I have a quick question. Can you remind me what the design standards say about metal siding?
The way it's been interpreted is that you can use on a wall surface up to 49% could be metal. Okay, that's how it was for Mr. Klingerman's project, if you remember correctly. This is all metal, so it doesn't technically meet the design standards. And again, the owner requests to come forward anyways, which he has the right to do, to try to make it all metal.
So just to be clear, it does not, based on the interpretation of your office, meet the design standards, but he's essentially, well, he would come our way one way or the other, but in essence, it's an appeal to us to waive the standards.
That's correct.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Ms. Mealy.
While I've continued to maintain over the past several years that we actually need to strengthen our design standards, especially in light of the amount of development that we're seeing in the city, our design standards have remained static. And this is at least as much my fault as it is anybody else's, so I'm not laying any blame here. But that said, I feel like our design standards in the CBD are actually relatively minimal and not particularly constrictive. And that this corridor, as we just discussed earlier tonight, is in the midst of a revitalization that the city has put considerable time into, if not money, and that the state, like Home and College and other partners, are putting a considerable amount of money into. I don't know, given the look of the other structures in the neighborhood, none of which are sided with metal, given the work that we're doing in the neighborhood, the aesthetics of that work, although I realize this is not particularly an aesthetic decision, but merely based on the rules that we have in place, I would not be inclined to support the certificate of appropriateness, although I would be happy either here or in another venue to try to work with Mr. Girardi and the owner to come to some conclusion, some approach that would satisfy our design standards and also satisfy the owner's budget and aesthetic desires.
The only building that I'm aware of that was approved by City Council was Mr. Klingerman's when he made it so it was 49%, but you also have to remember he was attaching to a building that was already steel. So that's why I think there was some leeway on that particular project, because he was attaching to the old arena that was there, and he tore down everything that was brick, and the only thing that remained was metal.
And just to be clear, the property was newly included in the CBD, so the other steel building had happened before it was subject to the design standards.
Correct. Any additional comments or questions? I also will not be inclined to approve the certificate. I agree with Ms. Mealy that, we would be better off to have more, have updated design standards beyond that which I was heavily involved in writing maybe a decade ago now. And it was seen as an incremental process, and we really haven't taken the next step in that increment since then. And so to say that we're going to weaken our already incomplete design standards is a concern to me. But in particular, the way I've always made my decisions about these things is not what I want to see happen, not what I prefer to see happen, not what my aesthetics are, and to not fight the battle of changing essentially the law based on the individual's proposal, right? And so if he met the design standards and I didn't like his aesthetic, I would still vote in favor of the application because that's what the law says. But here the situation is reversed. The law says it is not appropriate to have a metal building. in the CBD. And so to me, the appropriate enforcement of the existing law is to reject the certificate. And of course, then it becomes a fight for a different day if you are somebody who either believes that we should change the design standards to allow such a proposal, or to change ones to make it more stringent, to do more to protect neighboring property rights. But given the law as it stands today, I think the appropriate decision is to reject the certificate. Other comments, questions?
If you wouldn't mind, the owner is here, and if he...
Yeah, absolutely. Please feel free to comment or...
So I'm Travis Hammond. I own the property. The property is all block, except for gable ends that are wood. It's all peeling paint. You know, I was trying to design it, you know, so to make it look nice for the neighborhood.
Sure.
But, you know, as far as feasibility, that was my feasibility to put metal on. But, you know, if it gets tabled, I guess I'm going to just keep it block, and it's going to look like that. I mean, it's just something that, you know, I was trying to dress up the neighborhood just to make it look nice, and you know, I guess it will stay block.
Yeah, and I completely understand that, and I think, you know, the conversation, and I don't know how the vote's going to go, because only a couple members have spoken, but my suggestion, if it does end up being rejected, is that Mr. Girardi may have, through his experience, or may be able to point you to other people who might be able to give some ideas on, given a similar budget, what might be consistent with what the design standards are, so that you can accomplish your goals, which, by the way, I commend. My job is to apply the law in this kind of situation.
You know, I got a block building that's been, you know, it's not a historic building.
Sure, no,
It's like 50 years old or less. And, you know, I just tried to, you know, I purchased the building, I thought I'd dress it up, and then that's why I'm here today, to try and approve it. But, you know, I'm just trying to dress up the neighborhood to make it look nice. The neighbors were very happy about it, but that's fine. That's why I'm here.
Thank you, and I do appreciate the intentions, and I don't question those at all. I'm just speaking for myself, not for others, thinking about what the law currently says and how it's interpreted by our professionals. If there are any other comments, Mr. Henderson?
It's a difficult situation because we obviously want to see the building looking nice, and we appreciate your efforts to do that. But I personally don't feel at liberty just to change the law with my vote, and so I am compelled by my conviction just to stick with what the law says. So unfortunately, in that case, that's going to be how I have to vote, in accordance with my conscience that way. But I'm sure that we can help and figure out some way to resolve that and allow you to use those funds in another way that would allow you to dress it up better. That's my personal take on that.
Thank you very much. Other comments, Mrs. Katz?
When we ask people to serve on committees, one of the questions we do ask is, will you follow the letter of the law? And this is our law at this point. So we would go against what we expect other people to do. So I think we have to follow what we have already put in process here.
Thank you. Mr. Allison?
Mr. Hammond, what's the building currently used for?
Just warehouse space.
And that's what you intend to keep it as?
Yeah, I mean, I changed the headers because the headers were deteriorating. So I was like, well, let's dress up the outside while I'm doing it. But I mean, I only have limited funds for what I'm doing. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Seeing none, Ms. Frank.
Ms. Mealy?
No.
Mr. Noviello? Mr. Henderson?
No?
Mrs. Katz?
Yes, no,
Can you clarify, please?
no.
Mr. Slaughter?
No.
Mr. Allison?
No?
Dr. Williamson?
No. And so the certificate of appropriateness is not approved. And please do work with the city to see if there's a viable solution.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Girardi. Let me move then. I believe that gets us through all our guests this evening, and so we can move back up to item number 8, which is a real estate reduction for Weiss Markets 2019. Do we have an address for that?
Yeah.
636
636 West 3rd Street.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion and a second to approve this reduction?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. Mr. Grimes, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well, thank you. This is for a real estate reduction for taxes at 636 West 3rd Street, Weiss Markets Building. This was appealed to the county in 2017. That assessment appeal was denied by the county. And then that decision was appealed to the Commonwealth Court, and this was the settlement that was reached between the city, school district, and county and Weiss Markets. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions then on the reduction for 2019? Mr. Allison.
Just some education on the process. And we've done these before, but being familiar with the building and what it was, the land was assessment was reduced. Is that correct?
Correct, and really how the county assessment office has to do, how they have to go through it is if they reach a new fair assessed value for the property, they usually take that both off the land and improvement
Okay.
for that parcel to total what the new assessment should be.
So it was just a matter of mathematics because.
Yeah, where you take it from a little bit from here and the rest of it.
Yeah, regardless if there's an open, ongoing business on the property or not, the land should stay.
Right, and usually the assessment appeals are more because of market value, and if the assessment office had previously thought market value was here and this should be the assessment, if that market value is less, it usually comes off both. It's not that there's one specific instance from the actual improvement or the actual land that would reduce the value.
I guess I understand that to an extent, but it just seems like we're assessing the business, the ongoing business as well is taken into account.
If I may.
The court obviously sees it that way.
Sure, and if I may, to ask a question of Mr. Grimes that might help me understand the same kind of question that Mr. Allison is. There are two ways that property is assessed, at least, right? For most homeowners, it's assessed on the market value of the land, best they can determine, or land and improvement, the house and the land, based on what it would sell for if it sold today, but kind of adjusted back to the last time it was reassessed.
Correct.
And so that's what most of us are familiar with, right?
Correct.
Can you explain the other way that businesses can be assessed?
I can explain it from my experience, certainly
Sure.
not a professional appraiser. I can't,
Yeah, of course.
Can't get into too much detail, but for commercial properties, when they're assessed, you have to look at the commercial value. Now, it's not necessarily the business that's there, because if you have a great space that can be utilized for something, it may still have a value outside of what you're doing with that property.
But some of it is based on it can be based on the
Right, so
income generated off the property.
Right, so if you have a warehouse that's operating currently and you look at, the profit and loss of that warehouse, and it leads you to see that it's very profitable, then somebody would pay more for that business, which includes the property, because of the income it can generate. If you have a warehouse that's sitting empty, that can still be assessed higher than what it's currently worth as the operating business, because it might be valuable for someone else to purchase and, be just as profitable as the other warehouses operating in the area.
So business assessments are some combination of the intrinsic value of the land and the building, but also for operating businesses, the value of the business
You could
itself.
have a very small improvement and parcel that has a very profitable business on it that's worth more than a much larger parcel that has a less profitable business.
Does that, it's
Yeah.
always confused me, and so
Yeah.
that might help you as well.
So, and so then I wonder if somebody buys the property and puts another grocery store in there, or some kind of business, and it's really successful, are we able to go back?
We are able to ask, and in fact, if this property would sell in 3 weeks for $3 million, we have the right to appeal the assessment to the county on our behalf to say that it should be raised to, because that indicates to us that $3 million is the market value for that property. Apply the common level ratio, to get back to the value of the last time there was an assessment, and ask for the assessment to be raised to that value.
So at the sale, is that the only time we have an opportunity to address
We have
that?
other opportunities generally when there's building permits pulled. A lot of times those will change the assessment anyways, but you can't really just say because the business is more profitable, because we don't have any evidence of that to produce to the county, because somebody's willingly not going to turn over, their tax documents to us in order for us to raise their taxes.
Oh, that's great news.
Okay, and I have not seen this sale, but I can say that part of the settlement for this value was based on what Weiss Markets expected that sale value to be.
Okay.
He has come in and applied for a permit for a demise wall between the center of the building. He's going to have two businesses in there. There'll be several uses. Yeah. And he already has one half of it taken care of as far as he can.
Okay.
Is it public yet what that is? Okay.
And if that sale was what they expected it to be, then that's, one of the major driving factors in the reassessment of this property.
Okay. Right.
Now,
Thank
Randy,
you.
we lose out on the 3 million. But that's great news.
Thank you. Are there other comments or questions? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the real estate reduction is approved. Next item on the agenda is a real estate refund for the same property for 2018. Is there a motion and a second to approve this?
So move.
Second?
Here, a motion and a second, Mr. Grimes.
Because this appeal was filed in 2017, even though it was just settled, that would become effective January of 2018. So because we taxed them at a higher rate than the building should have been valued in 2018, we do have to refund the property owner for the taxes paid in 2018. And that refund amount based on the change in assessment would be $7,256.94.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and that refund is approved. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a grant application. Mrs. Frank?
A resolution authorizing the submission of a Greenways Trails and Recreation Program grant application to the Commonwealth Financing Authority.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
Second.
Here, a motion and a second. Ms. Nominger?
I guess I got deferred to for this one. So this would be a grant application for the Memorial Park Playground. We have received multiple quotes as well as depictions of the proposed playground, and so this would just be a grant application for funding for that project.
Thank you. And was this reviewed by the joint session of the Finance and Public Works Committee?
Correct.
Thank you. Ms. Mealy, did you chair that?
Yeah, I guess so. Nobody else tried to take it, so I ran with the ball there. Yes, Finance/Public Works did indeed discuss this item in our 1 p.m. meeting on Tuesday. And and we forwarded to the full body of council with a recommendation to table. With our pardon asked to the solicitor, we weren't entirely sure that was a legal recommendation to make, but we thought we were on relatively solid ground. I noticed he raised his eyebrows. I'm not sure what that means. Anyway, regardless, I guess just to get into the discussion a little bit, the grant application is due on the 31st of May. We have begun under the aegis of the Streets and Parks and Recreation Departments to gather the information, obviously the quotes from 3 different vendors related to submitting the grant application. And then we will have to establish that we can, that with the grant application and our own funds or some funds, we can meet both the whatever the lowest quote was, and also the 15% match for the $250,000. It so happens that the lowest quote was over the $250 plus the 15% match. But anyway, that is to say we are a good ways along to having finalized the application, but the application has not yet been finalized. So it was the recommendation of the Finance/Public Works Committee that we wait to approve the submission of the grant until the full parameters of the grant are established, the grant application are established. It didn't seem like we were too far out, but we do have a bit of a shortfall. I think the lowest quote that we received was $302,000, and we currently know that we have in place $287,500 with some community development block grant funding from the 2020 budget year and some and the $250,000 totality grant, assuming that we would, of course, receive it. I did speak to Jason Fitzgerald, who, with Penn Strategies, has been working on putting the grant application together in conjunction with Streets and Parks and Recreation, and made him aware that we were thinking that we should currently table it, and that there were another 3 meetings for us to approve the submission of the grant before before we pass the deadline for submission. So once we've gotten a little further in the process, he's going to bring it back, and he'll be attending whatever meeting it is that we officially, that is to say, if council approves the tabling this evening, Mr. Fitzgerald said that he would attend whatever meeting we decided we wanted to discuss the grant on.
As a point of order, would it be better to send it back to the Finance Committee rather than table it? Would the Finance Committee want to review it again?
I suspect that would be a wise idea.
Okay, so the
Thank you.
motion would be to, if that's the desire.
You're going to go against the recommendation of the Finance Committee?
No, I'm just thinking.
Finance, Public Works.
Remet? Yeah.
Anyway.
So I'm thinking the motion you would actually want to do to accomplish your goals would be remit to the Finance Committee.
Yes, okay. So I will make a motion that we remit this resolution to the Finance Committee pending further clarification on the grant application.
Second.
I hear a motion and a second. Comments or questions on the motion to remit? Mr. Henderson?
Just to say, it's not because we're against this project and not in desperate need for such a grant, because we are. It's only because we just don't have all the pieces together yet. So we can't actually submit the grant application yet. We just can't. So it would be unwise to approve the submission of the grant when we are unable to actually do that. So let's wait, and I think this is wise, to wait until we have all those pieces together. We're confident then that we can submit this grant application, and we are, again, in desperate need of it. So I think there's a great motive to get this going and to accomplish it within the time frame that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion to remit? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Novello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
And Dr. Williams?
Yes, and the item is returned to the Finance Committee for further review. Next item on the agenda then is a resolution authorizing the execution of a lease agreement for a backhoe. Mrs. Frank?
A resolution authorizing the execution of a lease agreement for the purchase of a 2019 Caterpillar 420F2 backhoe.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Hear a motion and a second. Mr. Winter, how are you this evening?
Very good, thank you. How about you?
Good.
This resolution's to approve Caterpillar Financial Services Corporation to finance a 2019 Caterpillar 420 F2 backhoe. The annual payments would be made in 2020, 2021, 2022 in the amount of $20,837.59. We would make an initial payment this year, a down payment of $30,000, plus they would give us $30,000 trade-in value of the current 2006 Caterpillar backhoe. The total cost of the new machine would be $116,500. We did check with a couple financial institutes to try to get the best interest rate. Caterpillar Financial Services was the best one for our money. Plus, it makes it one-stop shopping.
Great, thank you. And this was reviewed by Finance?
Yep, the Finance/Public Works Committee.
Ms. Mead.
All this airtime's going to go to my head. This was reviewed by the, both items were reviewed by the Finance Committee, and we did forward the purchase of the backhoe to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. No particular comments. Mr. Winder did discuss a bit the.
To clarify, you mean the lease?
The lease,
On this-
excuse
on this
me,
agenda.
I'm sorry that the, yeah,
Right.
I'm
That'll be the
getting
next
my
agenda
agenda,
item.
okay.
Yep. So
The
you can
only,
cover both if
the
you'd
only
like.
note on the lease, and members of council will probably have noticed this from the new documentation we got today, was that the original resolution did state the wrong years for the lease. With the lease, the term of the lease will pay $30,000 this year as a down payment, plus our $60,000, or $30,000 trade-in, remarkably. And then we'll be paying $21,000 basically every year in 2020, 2021, and 2022, meaning that the item will be fully paid off in 2022. It is exciting that we got a trade-in value of nearly a quarter of the value of the new item. It is not exciting that the cost of the item has nearly doubled since we purchased one in 2006. I think you said the one that we have was $60,000, and the one that we are getting is $116,000. But aside from that, yeah, no major comments on either the purchase agreement or the lease agreement. Mr. Winder did promise that there would be no new pickup truck acquisitions in the Streets and Parks Department until 2023, and further promised that he thinks they're in a good position to do that because this is the funding. The Streets and Parks Department arrived at the decision that this was a much more needed item than new pickup trucks, and this is the funding that we use for that annually.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from other members? Mr. Ellis?
Mr. Winder gave the background of why we need it, and maybe want to.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on that on the actual purchase.
Okay, we'll wait till you get to
Yeah, we're
that.
kind of doing it backwards for me,
Yeah.
but.
Sorry, Adam, we're stealing your thunder.
Any other comments from members of council on the lease agreement? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Nubiallo?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the resolution is approved. Next item on the agenda then is the purchase of that said backhoe. Mrs. Frank?
A resolution authorizing the purchase of a 2019 Caterpillar 420 F2 backhoe.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
So move.
Hear a motion and a second. Mr. Winder? Now you get to.
Okay. The biggest issue is, I know a 2006 does not sound very old for a machine, but this machine is used at Graffius Run in case of high water. It's used for snow removal. It's used for planting trees, rebuilding of catch basins. The Streets and Parks Department is currently in the process of installing 600 feet of drain pipe, 2 catch basins at Morrell Avenue and Bird Street. And the reason I bring that to light is because this machine is hopefully moving forward into the future going to be used for a lot more of these large projects. Royal Avenue has been removed from the paving list for multiple years due to drainage issues. So it was my intent this year to take on, for Streets and Parks, who's basically a maintenance department, take on a major undertaking of this We've done great. The piping is all in. The catch basins were poured today. That street will be paved next week. With that being said, we saved roughly $12,000 in tax money by installing this piping ourselves. This machine, we put $15,000 in it 2 years ago for leaking issues, which the only reason we didn't do it in-house is because the whole cab had to be removed. During the time of operating this machine on this project, we noticed the transmission's getting weak. We're starting to get more leaks. The estimate is about $20,000 to have the transmission rebuilt. So it was a sudden decision to change our mind on a pickup truck and look at a backhoe, but the goal is to keep trying to do large projects like this in-house, and in order to do that, we're going to need a machine of this capability.
Thank you very much. Anything further to add from finance? That's a no?
Nope, there is.
Mr. Allison?
And we are going to explore, Mr. Winder is, and see if that section of drain pipe that they replace can be counted for MS4 credits.
Oh, very nice.
And the work that they might do in the future with it, which is an added benefit.
Good call.
Yeah. Be a good thing to establish now at the outset.
Yeah.
Mr. Noviello?
Just to, again, to thank Adam for, thinking in this vein. Anytime we can do in-house work and to the tune of saving $12,000, of course, when you look at the overall budget, $12,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but if we're talking about multiple opportunities to do similar types of work, then we can add up those nickels and dimes, so to speak, and we're seeing a much bigger, savings in the long run there. I've seen this happen before. I've been with Adam's crew a couple of different times. I've seen how they work with other departments and done some good things in the past. And I think this is maybe a new way to go for us, to try and do as much in-house as we possibly can. Cut the bidding process and use some of the strength of ability that we have on hand right now that we're already paying for, and get the value out of that. So I thank you, Adam, for that work, and thank the crews for doing what they're doing as well.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson?
I don't remember if it was mentioned, but it should be mentioned that the trade-in value on the current machine is $30,000. And, that's almost half what we paid for it. Now's the time before we lose any more value on that. So just want to add that in.
Thank you. Mr. Allison?
One other item on, or thought on our storm drain system. We asked Mr. Winder, do we have an idea of what's under the ground? The last time it was categorized or cataloged was 1950. So unless Mr. Grado...
He had a bunch of papers rolled up in his trunk.
Yeah. Unless he knows where everything is buried, we don't have any idea of age or condition of parts of it. So.
Well, and I know we've been working for several years to try to implement a plan to put an authority in charge of that. Exactly, and despite our best efforts, we have not yet accomplished that goal. So in the meantime, we need to be as proactive as we possibly can. And so I thank Mr. Winder for trying to accomplish that task. Ms. Mealy?
But perhaps we should slow down just a little bit so that we don't scare any potential authorities off with too much information.
Well, they're getting an improved system.
It's true. No, we should definitely do the work, but Mr. Winder was discussing cameraing the rest of our existing drain pipes and working toward that. And we clearly need to move on that, but perhaps not super quickly.
Any additional comments on the resolution to purchase? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and that resolution is approved. Next item on the agenda is a resolution awarding bids. Mrs. Frank?
A resolution awarding the aggregate bids for the city of Williamsport.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
So moved. Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. Mr. Winder?
This is just a standard resolution we bring forward every year.
You've been talking to Mr. Nichols, haven't you?
We join in with other municipalities under the West Branch COG, and we submit what our potential use of aggregates is, from 2A subbase to cold patch, anti-skid, numerous different aggregates, and the bids are put out under one umbrella, basically. So this is just a list of the vendors that were the lowest bidders for us. So this is just in front of you for your approval for us to make those purchases through those different vendors.
Thank you. And this was reviewed by Finance. Ms. Mealy?
This was reviewed by Finance and forwarded to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. Really, our only discussion at Finance centered around what we did when we received absolutely no bids for a specific type of aggregate. And Mr. Winder said that it wasn't really a major issue. But unless other members of Finance or Public Works who were perhaps paying more attention than I was can remind me of anything else we talked about. Mr. Winder, if you want to address that point, I suppose you could, but.
The aggregates that say no bids, they're basically products that we don't typically use. We typically have anything over 100 ton is what we typically bid out under this. I mean, Bowman Field, we may have to get, 10 ton of screenings or something, but it's not a large enough quantity, and there's not enough municipalities come together that make the price drive down that far. So with something like that, we just do our 3 quotes, go pick it up locally. So that's the only reason why you would see no bid on some stuff. Other items are, if it's sandstone, we don't typically like to use sandstone. We try to stick with limestone. So we don't use sandstone to be bid on at all for us. Just things of that nature. It's whatever really our preference of use is, and like I said, materials that we generally use constantly.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Nubiallo?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and that item, that resolution is also approved. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing an agreement between the city and Penn College.
A resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement between the City of Williamsport and the Pennsylvania College of Technology.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
So move.
Second.
Here, a motion and a second. Mr. Winter?
I apologize, this one was put on the agenda late. This is an agreement which Penn College has recently started. Tree Revitalize grant trees are coming in April 23rd, and the college generally helps assist with planting of trees. So Tuesday morning, I received an email from the college requesting this form be signed. So this resolution basically gives the Director of Streets and Parks authorization to sign this agreement for the college students to come plant trees.
Thank you. And just before I ask for the committee report, Mr. White, Mr. Novio asked me ahead of time whether or not he should abstain on this agenda item, and I indicated to him that because it was not really a material issue for either the benefit of his employer or for himself, that it probably wasn't necessary to abstain. But I defer to your interpretation.
It's probably not necessary, but if he's not comfortable voting on it, there's nothing wrong.
Okay, so it's really up to you. I think I've run into these situations before, and it has no material impact, but sometimes it's just easier to be consistent. And so let me then refer it to Ms. Mealy.
To be honest, this item came through Finance on sort of an ad hoc basis. We didn't, it wasn't an agenda item, so we didn't make a specific recommendation.
Okay.
But we did note that obviously free labor from Penn College is always desirable, and we were excited to have their participation again this year. And I think all the feedback with Finance and our single member of Public Works was positive.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions from members of council? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Nubiallo?
Abstain.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and that resolution is approved. Next item on the agenda is a resolution awarding a contract for street line painting. Mrs. Frank?
A resolution awarding the 2019 contract for street line painting for the city of Williamsport.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
Second?
Hearing a motion and a second. Mr. Winter?
This resolution is the same as the aggregate one. The only difference is, this work was all to be done last year by this contractor. The contractor never made it to multiple municipalities. So upon an agreement between West Branch Cogs solicitor and this contractor, the work will actually be done at 60% of the original cost. So this would basically cover our line painting for this year. Let me find my note here. Originally, the cost would have been $13,072.25. The new price is going to be $8,758.41. So after talking to Mr. Smith, he said that I needed to just bring a new resolution to council for it under this year, but leave the price at the original cost, just let you know it'll be done at 67%.
Very nice. Is this reviewed by finance?
This was reviewed by finance.
Busy week?
On the other hand, this too was not officially an agenda
Correct.
item at the Finance Committee, so we didn't forward it with any recommendation, but a 35% off, a 35% discount seemed like an exciting thing. And I think I made the suggestion maybe we should put those $5,000 toward the match for the Memorial Park work that we're trying to put together, but obviously it will go where it may. Yeah, no, I defer to other members of the Joint Committee here.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Noviello?
Adam, I know you and I kind of briefly spoke about the idea of painting curbing where we would be restricting parking.
Correct.
Do we ever consider factoring that into this, or do we do that ourselves in-house?
We would do that ourselves in-house. We have
plans to do that anytime soon?
We do. The first goal would be to get the streets cleaned so that we can actually do it. But we do have a sprayer that we use for like line painting on the bridge. We do the crosswalks, the arrows and the turning lanes, things of that nature. This contract is basically for the double yellow, skip lines, single white lines, just the large projects. They come through in 2 days and accomplish all of that painting.
I look forward to seeing our in-house crews take advantage of that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Mrs. Frey.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and that resolution is approved. Thank you.
If I may, real
Absolutely.
quick, I forgot to touch one thing on the, when we were talking about the backhoe. With the help of Megan Dayhoff, Pennsylvania Municipal League puts out their magazine every month. Streets and Parks may actually be the front cover of next month's magazine for the project we did on Royal Avenue.
Wow.
So it'll be interesting to see if we make it.
Yeah.
So
Thank
is this your first magazine cover?
Yes.
Or
I
have you
won't
been
be
on the
on-
cover of other magazines over the years?
Not to mention Rolling Stone magazine.
I made sure we promoted all Streets and Parks employees. So.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda then is a resolution for an addendum to a partner agreement. Mrs. Frey.
Resolution to approve the partner host site addendum between the City of Williamsport and STEP AmeriCorps for a part-time AmeriCorps service member in the Recreation Department.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Hear a motion and a second. Hello again, Ms. Omri.
Hello, Dr. Williamson, members of council. So before you this evening is simply an addendum to the partnership agreement that we had approved in last August for a part-time member, which would serve August 2018 through August 2019. However, Kayla was able to find gainful employment elsewhere, which is the point of AmeriCorps. So we wish her the very best, but for the time that she was in the office and the time that she served with us, we do owe Step AmeriCorps $1,853.52. So it is less than the $4,800 that we had budgeted, and the only difference for this is that they're asking that we re-sign the agreement with the addendum stating that we acknowledge that she did not finish her time with us. However, she was on track to complete more full-time hours rather than half-time hours, which is what we had originally requested.
Thank you. And did this go before finance?
Sorry, guys. Anybody else wants to talk, just, but this did come before finance. In fact, we discussed it at the prior finance meeting as well, and we forwarded it to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. The only note is that we have a $3,000 surplus in this line item in the recreation department, and Ms. Novinger is trying to figure out exactly what that can best be purposed to.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Novello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
That's 7 yeses. We're going to move to item 17, resolution to approve an agreement with M&T Bank. Mrs. Frank, please.
Resolution to approve an agreement with M&T Bank.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And a second. Thank you, Chief Dimick.
Good evening, members of the City Council. This is a resolution to approve an agreement with M&T Bank for the financing of a 2019 Chevy Tahoe that will be used as a command vehicle for the fire department. The price of the vehicle is $54,462.40. There will be a $10,000 down payment on the vehicle at the time of purchase. This is a 3-year lease agreement with a $1 buyback at the end of the lease agreement. The yearly payments will be $16,168.59 with an interest rate of 4.392%. This was brought before the Finance Committee.
Thank you. And before the Finance Committee.
Yes, indeed, and I believe Finance noted that this was really only a difference of maybe $500 in total then from the F&B contract that we had initially authorized 2 weeks ago. But it is $500 less, and the F&B contract we were quoted at would have been $1,500 less than this, but they had run the numbers wrong, and so and could not honor the deal that they had mistakenly offered us. So this was the next best offer, and it's simple. We forwarded the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Questions or comments from council? Mr. Novello.
Can you tell us, maybe just a ballpark figure, how much it will cost to outfit this unit for use?
This is fully outfitted. This is the vehicle
comes all ready to go.
and the upfitting of the vehicle. So it comes in ready to go into service.
All right, great, thank you.
Anybody else? If not, Mrs. Frank, the motion, please.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Novello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Frank. Motion passes. I believe we've covered all of those items that we, so we're down to item 23, except for filing. Public Works meeting minutes of February 12th, 2019. Public Safety meeting minutes January 15th, 2019. Finance meeting January 15th, 2019. And Controller's report for February 2019. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Questions, discussion by council? Hearing none. Mrs. Frank, please.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Novello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Frank. We're down to announcements. Next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be held Thursday, April 25th, right here at 7:30 p.m. in City Hall chambers. Upcoming meetings, Monday, April 15th at noon, the Planning Commission. Tuesday, April 16th, at 10 a.m., blighted property, 3:30 p.m., ERC, we'll hold on to that for now, 6:30 p.m., Harbor Board. Thursday, April 18th, 10:30 a.m., Zoning Hearing Board, 4 p.m., Board of Health. Monday, April 22nd, 4 p.m., Rec Commission meeting. Tuesday, April 23rd, 1 p.m., Finance Committee, 2:30 p.m., Public Works, 3:30 p.m., Public Safety. Wednesday, April 24th, 11:30 a.m., Redevelopment Authority. Oh, there's nothing on the back. Mrs. Frank thought there might be something on the back, but it worked out there's not.
Close.
So that brings us to the end of our regularly scheduled agenda, and I'll turn it back over to President Williamson.
Thank you, and I'll add one additional announcement then, that we will have an executive session immediately following this meeting for the purpose of negotiation. Are we to any comments from members of council?
Yes, we are.
There we go. Mrs. Katz.
There definitely will be a Public Works meeting on the 23rd, and I do thank all my council members for taking up the slack when I was not able to hold the meeting on Tuesday. Thank you very much. I appreciated it.
Thank you. Mr. Slaughter.
Just a reminder that Saturday, Mr. Ronnie Deemer is having the first community cleanup. It's going to start at Stevens from 8 to 11, and they're going to clean up that neighborhood. And then there's also going to be at noon, it will then transfer over to Fire Tree. There'll be a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. They're going to clean up that area, kids' activities, food trucks from noon onward, and all of the proceeds will benefit the all-inclusive playground at Stevens. So it's in conjunction with the School District Education Foundation, and all proceeds go back to that. And it's also the Easter egg hunt in Brandon Park on Saturday at 2 o'clock for the city's Easter egg hunt. So there's a lot going on Saturday, and it's going to be a good day. So if anyone's so inclined, clean up from 8 to 11, come over, play a little basketball and food truck, kids' activities, go hunt some Easter eggs, and then come back.
Sounds like a good day. Any other comments from members of council? Any comments from the administration or the treasurer's office? Mr. Roy?
Dr. Williamson, you did ask me to check on that one issue on the tabling. The city's ordinance says that its decision needs to be made within 30 days, but since it's the city's own application, the city, by allowing it to remain tabled, would be equivalent to permission to allow it to be extended beyond the 30 days. So normally you'd need the agreement of the applicant, but because you're the applicant, you don't.
Okay. Yeah, it was mainly so that we had that in our mind for other applicants in the future that asked the question, but so thank you for researching that. Any comments from the general public? Please approach, name and address for the record, and how are you this evening?
Good evening. I'm David Stone, and I was appointed some time ago the bicycle coordinator of Williamsport, and made some remarks, and actually we passed an ordinance about designing streets for all users. And what I would just comment on, we have an ongoing bicycle committee meeting that meets from time to time, and I was enthused about seeing the presentation tonight, but what concerned me a little bit was nowhere did I see any bicycles in it, and I'm not sure whether the, I have not had an opportunity to see the full extent of the drawings that have been made to date, but I just wanted to make sure that the infrastructure required for bicycles as far as bike lanes or, for example, to get to the new college where they're putting in the bicycle shop and then we have the new entrance to the bike Riverwalk. But how do you get from here to there without having a dedicated way to get there? And perhaps that's in the plan. I just haven't seen it. And from the video, it looked like there were pedestrians and cars going around, but it did not appear there was room for bicycles. So I'm not sure how far along things are that it would, I would request that the bike committee would have an opportunity to review the plans just to see if we could make some tweaks to put in bike-friendly amenities.
Thank you very much. And I know I've asked about the similar issues a couple times, so I have hope that they've stayed into the plans, but I haven't gotten an update in a number of months on those details. Any additional comments from the general public? Please approach the bench and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everyone, City Council and all the leaders of the city. Good evening, and to everyone who's here. My name is Irish Griffin. I live in the 1500 block of 4th Street here in Williamsport. Well, my reason here for tonight, you know, you guys probably looking at me saying she's probably here for the hoops, which I am, but, you know, the hoops is not, I've been here several times, and not just because of the hoops. You guys know I fought real hard to have the pool reopened. You guys know I used to have several meetings on drugs and violence and crimes here in City Hall. So it's just not the hoops. I guess it's just stuff in the community that kind of gets to me, and I just come in, you know, to express that. Oh, I left my glasses, but that's all right. I hope I can see. I've been sitting back there scribbling stuff down here to say, so I didn't get it all mixed up, but I didn't know that you guys was going to have a meeting tonight. I just found out about it. So I came here, but now let's see. Oh, well, like I said, my whole point is, what is up with the hoops? What is up with the hoops? I have here, down here, thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, you gotta give me an extra 30 seconds for that.
Absolutely.
So, let's see. Yeah, so, yes, that's it. That's my whole point. What's up with the hoops? And it says, you know, I was reading in the paper the other day, you know, you got the hoops over here, you got the hoops over here, and really, what's up with the hoops? And I want to know also, why are you bouncing the hoops around? Why the hoops ain't bounce around like this? And I have here, one second, y'all, I scribbled this down. Okay, so now I know that you guys have your eyes on the fire tree. Well, I just wanted to say, you know, I fought hard for the pool up there. I protested out in the heat and in the rain just to bring the pool back there. And now you're taking away the hoops. I don't play hoops, but I think that it's a very valuable part of that part of the city, along with Bowman Field, along with the skateboard, along with the Little Leaguers, you know, along with everything but the pickleball. Now, you want to move the young ones and keep the older ones there as far as the pickleball. To me, that's not fair. And my main reason for being here, when I found that you were eyeing Fire Tree, I know that in that community, I found out that that community there, and you know, was 40 years ago or so, was just all black. Blacks wasn't allowed out of that community. As far as what, you know, I was told, you know, none in Newberry, South Side, went towards, you know, anywhere, Loyal Sock, just right there in that community. And you have there the Circle there, with a few houses there. You have Timberland. You had Bethune-Douglas, which is now in Fire Tree. And I don't know how many of you all are familiar with Mary McLeod Bethune, or Frederick Douglass. That was a great place there. But the name's been changed to BD, the Senate, now Fire Tree. And did I forget to say Browntown? Browntown just sets the whole scene for that area there. And then you can put the basketball hoops there. That just sets it off. To me, it's like, you know, I don't mean any disrespect to anyone in the ears out here, but blackish. again, I say, what's up with the hoops? Why does the hoops being bounced around like this? That's the original place where it's always been. A lot of you guys here who are from Williamsport even played hoops down there at Memorial Park. And I don't know, maybe when I found out from you guys exactly what your intentions are there, then, I'll probably understand a little more. But right now, to me, it's like you're just putting those hoops there. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? You're putting the hoops there in Fire Tree, taking Alizé Johnson's money and putting it there with Fire Tree. He got enough money. As far as I know, he got enough money to do what he needs to do there. That's where the violence was at, there. And you putting that hoops down there. I just think, again, I say, what's really up with the hoops? What's really up with the hoops? And, I don't need any comments because I'm walking out the door, but, I'll find out later, when I read in the paper, but the hoops from there to there, that's just so blackish to me. This is so blackish. I think it's a disgrace, really. Hey, God bless you all. I'm out of here.
Thank you. And as you alluded to, we usually don't respond directly, but I'm sure members of council will be happy to talk to you afterwards, because I believe there's some information that's incorrect out there.
Right.
Are there any additional comments from the general public? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there there was one more. My apologies. I did not see it. Thank you for catching it, Mrs. Katz. Sorry, I didn't see you.
It's okay.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, it's Tiasha Machuga, 1242 Park Avenue. I just thank you for giving me this moment to speak. The presentation looked great from Lycoming College and the East 3rd Street revitalization. My big concern is while he was showing the video, where's that parking being moved to? That's going to be not on Mulberry and 3rd anymore, with his new garden going in, and then across from 33 East. He has buildings in the video, and it's right next to the Center for Independent Living. A lot of those parking spots are rented through Parking Authority for people that work downtown. So I'm hoping as the development moves on forward that you guys find a spot for those parking, because we have that issue downtown big time. And, taking away 2 lots is going to be a big deal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Any other comments from the general public? Going once, going twice? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I hear your motion in a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.